Alrighty. Well, I'm going to kick things off. We'll probably still have some stragglers coming in, but thank you everyone for joining us as usual for yet another Exit Advisors Small Business Town Hall series. Before I pass it over to Gary to really introduce Al, I'm going to give everybody kind of the Exit Advisors spiel, and many of you have heard it. But Exit Advisors is a Houston-based lower middle market advisory and consulting firm. We work with small businesses, transaction size 5 to 50 million, to help them prepare for an exit or an acquisition. And we like to do this, a good bit in advance, because that gives us more time to really get our hands on the business, dive into it, and identify red flags and make as many of the changes and fixes as possible. In that regard, we really like to get ahead of our clients, take an education-based approach as we're doing here, and work with them very intimately up until they're ready. So whether you're ready today or in a few years, this is the time to start thinking about it. The other approach that we take is by partnering with other service firms, with the CPAs, wealth managers. We're doing a big initiative right now working with search funds, for example. And one point I want to kind of mention that I haven't done in the past is, part of our lean organization has allowed us to set up this kind of referral system. So not only when we're working with other advisors, we can integrate them into the system and into the M&A transaction so that they get deal utilization and hours booked, whatever, client retention. But the simple fact of the matter is you can participate in a deal simply by, helping us originate deals with businesses that are looking to sell. We set aside 10, maybe 15% of our entire success fees for individuals that are able to help us originate high quality deals that ultimately lead to a successful transaction. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind. It's there. It's something that we really try to promote to help, help get our name out there. So without further ado, though, I'll get off my soapbox and pass it over to Gary, who's going to introduce Al. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I'm fortunate enough that I get to introduce Al Danto, who is my business partner and exit advisor and a good friend, and plays music with me as well. He's a guitarist and also a semi-pro hockey player. But we can get into the business elements of it. I mean, he is a serial entrepreneur, and he actually started his first business when he was 26 years old. And he built that into a national company. He did actually 12 acquisitions of other companies and was fortunate enough to get to sell the business himself, like we try to help others sell their businesses. And then he got to the opportunity to go to Rice and get his MBA, and then started investing in other private companies and helping them find their way and put in efficiencies and infrastructure, build value. And then Al started getting into investment banking and started blessing others with his knowledge, helping them sell their companies, finding true value as a valuation analyst. So really has a good understanding of company specific risk and how to bring value to the table and go out and find a strategic transaction. He's also a Rice professor. I've helped him in several classes. He does an exceptional job over there, training people and putting them out in the world to make a difference. So with that, I would really like to introduce Al, and I think you'll really enjoy his presentation today. It's full of rich information. Thank you, Al.
Hey, thank you, Gary. I really appreciate it. And I noticed one of a guy I play hockey with out there, Joe Frashkin. I think he would probably contradict your opinion of it being semi-pro, probably far from that. But I enjoy it. It's a passion I've had since I was 8 years old. I played for a long time now, at least 50 years. I played ice hockey for 50 years. Crazy. But this is really one of my favorite subjects to teach. I enjoy it. I think I understand it from the core. Like Gary said, I started my business in my early 20s and then acquired my first company at 26. So learned a lot of really hard lessons along the way. Had the good fortune to go back to Rice and learn it from a practical standpoint, kind of from the academic standpoint. So I am going to really just combine a life of lessons and academic principles really into about 45 minutes to an hour here with questions and answers. Really good thing about today's topic, great takeaways, really, really good takeaways, really, really good key summaries of some concepts that you can apply. And I think it'll give you a good understanding of the valuation process and really how to increase value and some misconceptions. So here's my lessons for today. I want to go through some common valuation misconceptions. I want to talk about relative value. That's kind of, if I had an area, I think of kind of specialty and focus from an academic standpoint. It's just been in there. I've learned a lot along those lines. Talk about that. The benefits of a strategic buyer, the key concept to increasing value. I'm going to give you the greatest piece of advice that I ever had, and I'm going to actually give you the second greatest piece of advice that I ever had. So you get to take that away. I will talk about reducing risk and increasing value, and then we'll end up with an outline of a plan to increase value and some questions and answers. And along the way, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to try to incorporate. I haven't done this online, but I'm going to try to give you a chance to win some money and learn a lesson. Gary doesn't know, but I might spend some of the company's money, or I might win some for us. Gary, we'll see what happens here. But with that, let's go. So here's some common misconceptions over the years that I've seen. So a lot of people think that more tangible assets equal a higher value. That's not true. Value of businesses are based on cash flow. And sometimes the more assets that you have in a company, the more tangible assets can actually decrease value. So I spent most of my career, my pre-Rice career, acquiring printing companies. And we knew we were going to have to replace some of those assets in there. So we actually took that cash flow out and we had to budget for capital expenditures to replace that. So in general terms, quite often a service company with very little tangible assets can have a higher value. Might not be easier to finance, but they have a higher value. So that's a real common misconception. Another misconception, and I can give you a really good example. This really came up to me yesterday. Businesses are valued on historic earnings. It's not true at all. So I'm a member at a popular fitness franchise, and last year they were full, limited, almost a wait list in every class. And now with COVID, they're down about 70%. So if you looked and you valued them on their historic earnings, they're going to look really good. But companies aren't valued on historic earnings. You can get an idea for what a company may be at, but they're not valued on historic earnings. Valued on current and expected earnings. Another real common misconception is businesses in my industry sell for the same multiple or kind of the same average. Not true at all. A wide range. Sometimes it can be 5 to 6 times a difference in value for companies that are same size, even with the same revenue and earnings. We'll talk about that a little bit. Another common valuation misconception is less debt equals a higher valuation. Not true. Here's the reason why. If you think about a house that has a $500,000 valuation and it has $100,000 in debt and $400,000 in equity, what's the value of the house? It's $500,000. If you have a house that's valued at $500,000 with $400,000 in debt and $100,000 in equity, or the opposite of what I said before, same valuation. So kind of a common misconception. A really big one with small business owners is that they should get credit for future growth opportunities. Well, if your company is going to grow and you're going to sell it to somebody and they're going to take it over and take all that risk, then shouldn't they get the growth? Right? So we see some type of overvaluation expectations on growth opportunities. Sure, buyers and valuation analysts will look at growth opportunities, but if you're going to sell the company and transfer ownership, then that person that steps in is going to assume that risk. So we don't see a whole lot of growth given to small valuations and small business acquisitions. Another common one is if I have a 10% interest in my business, so sometimes I might want to sell my employees or somebody else a 10% interest, it's just worth 10% of the overall value. That's not true. There's discounts for lack of control. A minority shareholder can't decide how the company's run, make key decisions, and they can't tell you how to market the company. So those are some common misconceptions that come out. I get asked those a lot, and just thought we'd start with that. Next thing, let's look at average valuations of a small business. So this is a Pepperdine study. It's probably the most respected study of small business valuations that are out there. So on the left, we see SDE, which is seller's discretionary earnings. It's all the earnings that come into a seller before you take out any money for a salary or benefits, like insurance, travel, stuff like that. So this average small business under $500,000 in seller's discretionary earnings sells for about 2 times that, 500,000 to $1 million, about 2.6, and $1 million to 2, about 3. If you back out the salary and go to cash flow, the expenses that the owner take out, it comes up to about 3.3 times. And we can see, you can see that first quarter 2020, the valuations have come down, right? Just with the COVID risk and everything in there. But typically the average small business sells for somewhere around 3 times what the owner takes out, right? That'd be about 4 times after you take out a salary expense. So what's the objective to increase value? Well, if you think about average, it's just a midpoint. It's the midpoint of a whole set of data. So if you're a CPA firm, if you're a restaurant, if you're a dry cleaner, if you're a manufacturer, you're going to have averages within your industry. Some are higher, some are a little bit lower. But think about averages as just being a midpoint. It's just a midpoint. So companies in the same industry with the same earnings, the same revenue have vastly different valuation. And why is that? Well, it's because no 2 businesses are really alike and their risk profiles are different. So when we start at the premise and our theory of how do we increase value, we have to look at how do we decrease risk? How do we make us better than average, right? And move us out there. The key valuation concept, but you just got to take away, once you start to compare revenues to earnings, the difference in valuation are companies that decrease risk. As you decrease the risk, the company-specific risks of the business, you increase the value. That's the heart and soul of it. It's a heart and soul. It's a heart and soul of what we do as a valuation analyst. We say small businesses in an industry are going to have a range, and we start to look and we start to move the valuation left or right, really depending on the risk profile. And if for those of you that joined us the last time that I did this just kind of on valuation process, we compared 2 flower shops. One flower shop was in Austin, Texas, and one flower shop was in Detroit, Michigan. Same revenue, same earnings, completely different valuations across the board based on their risk factors. So that's the key. That's the heart and soul of it. So as a business owner, as you start to look at what you can do, or as an advisor, as a CPA, as an entrepreneur, what can I do to increase my value, my relative value? And it's to start to decrease the risk, right? Make me stand out from the competition. A little word real quickly. If you look out here, let me go back. If you look out here on the valuation curve, if you look out at that, what are the highest values that we see? Well, it's when a strategic buyer steps in. A strategic buyer can absorb a company and really get these benefits. They start to look at purchasing power. A larger company might buy the same products that you buy, and they get them at discounts, right? So that all goes to their cash flow. They can leverage what they have in-house, their systems, their processes that they have. They've got a highly experienced team workforce that they're leveraging out. There's cross-selling opportunities. And there's other opportunities for healthcare efficiencies, financing synergies, overhead reduction, and other intangibles. So I was considered a consolidator of printing companies. When we bought a printing company, it could be making very little money. And we would close the company down and move it in with us. We'd eliminate the overhead, we'd eliminate a receptionist, we'd eliminate some of the people in the back running the presses, some of the overhead. And we might have a company that was breaking even, and when we looked at it, we could add maybe several $100,000 of earnings to it. So as a strategic buyer, we would certainly pay more maybe than fair market or somebody coming in to just look at return on investment. So as a business owner, you need to really be aware of who those potential strategic buyers are out there in your industry. Who's going to benefit more from acquiring your company than just someone looking to make a return on their investment? So that's where you see crazy valuations. And you hear them in the media a lot. Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion. And I think WhatsApp was barely breaking even. Why did they do that? Well, the value of a WhatsApp customer to Facebook was a lot more than it was to WhatsApp. They could absorb all those customers, take them over, and they were a lot more valuable to Facebook. And it was a lot easier to get the millions of customers that Facebook may not have had at the time when they acquired WhatsApp. So that was a strategic purchase. So you see a crazy valuation. So that's, if you're fortunate enough to get that, that's what you look for. Doesn't always happen. And sometimes valuation expectations get out of line because we hear of one or two crazy strategic acquisitions, even within industries. You see that. Here's my most valuable business advice that I ever got. I was about, 7 or 8 years into my career. I was at a Houston Aeros hockey game, and I was there with Russell Vail, who was the founder of the Houston Entrepreneurs Organization. And Russell had just sold his company. And he told me, what he got for the company. Just made my eyes pop out, and made me realize, hey, maybe one day I could do this. Maybe one day that I could build and sell a company. And I said, what piece of advice would you give me? And he told me to build a predictable recurring revenue stream, take out risk, and know when to get out. And those of you who joined me last time, I shared this story a little more depth, but literally came back and I started to look at every possible way within our company, a printing company, a small printing company. How do you get predictable recurring revenue? Well, we looked and we started to get magazines, stuff that would repeat every month, and newsletters. We partnered with software companies. So when they installed a system, companies would turn to us for their business forms, their invoices, checks, materials like that. And we started to sell across the country. And when the time came to sell the company, we were way, way above average. Now, we see that a lot today. I have an irrigation system here at my house in Sugar Land, and the irrigation company has this as a recurring revenue cycle. They bill my credit card every month. They come out and they do a systems check. And what are they doing? Well, they're getting ahead of it. They're locking me down as a customer. They're coming out here. They're making changes. They're making my life easy. And they just hit my credit card every quarter. One of the most profitable and highly valued franchise systems out there was Massage Envy. Why? Because every month they hit your credit card. Every month. It's recurring revenue. So that recurring predictable revenue increases value more than anything else. That's what buyers want to buy, increases value. So you have to find ways to do that. A good friend of mine, Dave Linda, built a closet company, and he kept track of where every customer came from, his funnel. He could say, if I do this much in SEO, I get this much in referral, I get this much coming from this advertisement. He was able to build a funnel out, and you could really see that his revenue was predictable, even though each job was unique. So that's the most valuable business advice that I ever got, and it literally changed my life and my fortunes forever. So if you're in a position to advise somebody or take advantage of that, then do it. Try to do it. Think of ways to do it. Second most valuable advice concept that really I started to understand at a young age, because I was putting out money and oftentimes going to debt to acquire these companies, and it was a lot for me at 26, 27, 28 years old to buy these companies. So the fear of losing money has more influence over people's investment decisions than to make money. So risk is asymmetric. The pain of loss hurts a lot more than the gain, and we all do more to protect our downside to do that. So if you think about a buyer coming in, or someone that's going to invest or value your company in the millions of dollars, their first concern is, am I going to lose this money? That's their first concern. Your first concern as a seller on the other side is, look, it's not that risky, and we've got all this great upside, and we're going to grow the company, you're going to make all this money. But it's like buying anything that's really used, a house, a car, anything. You're going to be concerned that it's going to break down, or you're going to have problems. So we have to start our strategy on increasing value by decreasing these risks. And when we do that, we'll really begin to gain comfort. Those that are evaluating us and looking at us for possible investment or acquisition, they'll start to have confidence, and they'll be willing to pay more on the upside. So this actually is a simple concept, but it actually won a Nobel Peace Prize. Tversky and Kahneman were behavioral economics. I encourage everyone out there to read and understand this. It's a fascinating subject on finance from a psychological and behavioral standpoint. So what I want to do right now to kind of cement this example, I do this in the classroom. I'm not sure how it's going to work online, but heck, I'm willing to try. I'm going to give increased odds on a coin flip. So if you're to flip a coin, you have 50-50 odds, right? So people always talk about expected value outcomes. So we're going to flip a coin, and if you win, I'm going to give you $15. If you lose, you're going to pay me 10. So absolutely, I think everyone will agree, someone like me in an irrational state of mind says, I'm going to give you higher than expected value probability. You're going to take that bet every time. Those of you who take that bet every time, raise your hand. There should be a hand raising button. Everyone should raise their hand. All right, we've got 50-some participants. So this crazy guy is going to give you $15 if you win the coin toss. You're going to give me 10 if you lose. All right, we've got 20-some that didn't take it. Hey, Andrew, call on somebody who didn't take it. Ask them why they didn't take the bet.
All right. Let's see. Alexis didn't take it. She didn't want to bet. We'll see if you want me to see why.
Yeah. This is my classroom. I can cold call.
All right. Let's see. Alexis, your mic should be ready to go if you want.
Let me see who I recognize out here. Hang on, I can see the participants. Who didn't take it?
We got Mark Letso.
Mark Letso. I know Mark Letso. Mark, why didn't you take the bet? He's probably sleeping.
Let me pull him up. Mark, you there? Is your mic working?
It is now. You got me?
There you go.
Man, I literally just logged on 20 seconds ago. I missed the bet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, likely excuse, Mark.
Sorry about that. Promise.
Somebody who didn't take the bet, unmute and say why you didn't take the bet.
Try Thomas. Thomas, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, Thomas, why didn't you take the bet? Is that Tom Easley?
Yeah. And
Why didn't you take
my
my bet,
into this? But here's my answer. I think there's only like a 50% greater return, and I thought the slide you had up earlier had 100% return in the old pain and gain slide.
So you need more. How about $20? Would you take $20, Tom? If I give you 20 and lose 10?
Then I'd be right at the break-even point, wouldn't I?
No, you'd make $20 or you'd lose 10.
Not according to the slide you just had up there, where I guess it was what was it, 2 slides?
That slide was a theory, Tom.
Oh, okay.
That slide means that you need to have more on the win side than you do on the lose side. You want the expected value has to be greater than the true expected value. So I'm just going to ask you, Tom, $20. $20.
Doing well, thank you.
If you win, you owe me 10 if you lose. Double the odds.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay, good. I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to go to my coin toss. Can you all see that?
Yes.
All right, Tom, heads or tails?
Heads.
You win. I owe you $20.
Next Tuesday.
Okay. Hey, now we're going to do it again, though, Tom. Those same odds. You take those same odds every time, right?
Yeah, those are good odds.
Okay.
Well,
Let's do it for $100 now.
okay.
How about 1,000?
I'll stop at 100.
Why are you stopping at 100? You're going to take that bet every time, right?
I'm spending other people's money.
It's your money. It's your money. You're supposed to take that bet every time, right? From a practical standpoint, right? From just the odds standpoint.
Well, yeah.
Why are you hesitating?
From a theoretical standpoint, I should, yeah.
From a theoretical standpoint, you should, right? And from a theoretical standpoint, people should probably pay more than you think for your company, right? But why don't they? Because of that. Because of this theory, right? It's the gain of the pain from the loss, right? So as entrepreneurs, the glass is always half full, more than half full. But from someone looking in, the glass is always more than half empty. They're going to look at the gain, they're going to look at the opportunity for gain, but only once their downside's protected, right? So this is their concept. They won a Nobel Peace Prize, and we really see it in business valuations, and we really see it in acquisitions. We just see what might be a fair theoretical value if there's maybe some excess risk in there, that it's just going to be decreased more, right? Risk is going to be decreased more on the downside in valuation. So that's the big key from this. So the biggest risk that impact a small business. So as a small business owner, what can you do? What risks are out there, right? So when you start comparing companies in the same industry together, companies that have these risks are going to really get devalued, and we're going to see a divergence in valuation as we see ones that have kind of covered these risks or eliminated them to ones that don't. So I've kind of gone through, I'll run through these real quickly, and then we'll talk about a plan that we can put together. So to increase value as a business owner, you really have to look and say, okay, do I have any type of predictable recurring revenue? Is it out there? Or am I only as good as the next job that I have to go out there and get, and it's costly? The ones that I've highlighted are ones that you can really have an impact on, right? These are things I think as a business owner or as an advisor to business owners, what you can really have an impact on and make a difference. So the other big risk in small business, probably one of the biggest risks, is owner dependency. What happens when the owner of that company leaves and walks out the door? All the handshakes, relationships, knowledge that they have. It's kind of like the engine in a car. You're removing the engine from the car when that owner walks out the door. So the first thing an owner really needs to do is start removing himself from the business. A really good friend of mine, Gustavo Comel, decided he wanted to sell his business. It was logistics and freight forwarding, import business. And he spent a month going around the country with his family in an RV just to see how his business would do. And when he got back, they had done really well, and his employees and managers said, hey, leave, going out for another month. And Gustavo ended up selling his company, huge valuation, still a good friend. He retired to Asheville, North Carolina, and his company was acquired. It wasn't dependent on him at all. He had good processes and managers set up. A customer concentration is a real big risk, real big devaluer to small businesses. So if you have all your eggs in a small basket, few big customers, it's a huge risk, huge risk. Casey and I did a valuation several years ago of a company. They process claims. I think they were doing about $50 million in claims, but 90% of them were for the BP spill. So we did a valuation, even though they had $4 or $5 million in EBITDA, the valuation was extremely low, very, very low, because that was a customer base. When it went away, they were going to go down, and it wasn't going to last forever. So despite the fact that they had big revenue, big earnings, they had a very concentrated customer base. So a concentrated customer base will really devalue a company. Poor financial and accounting records, incredible impact of valuation. We advise, if you can, if you get to a certain size, an audit, certainly financial, reviewed financials, or at least make sure they're coordinated gap and they're clean. Weak policies and procedures are really hurtful. You have to remember that somebody from the outside is looking in, and they don't have in their head all the knowledge that you had. So they need to be able to step in and say, okay, how do we handle sales? How do we handle production? How do we handle invoicing? And what are our processes and systems? Managers and key employees that can just walk out the door with a non-compete or non-solicitation agreement is a real vulnerability. It's a real risk. A lack of a plan or even forecast, simple forecast. And then if you can go back and say, this is my forecast going into 2017, 2018, we were very accurate, we exceeded, or we reduced it because of this, but you have to understand and what the plan, the forecast looks like. So someone coming in is going to ask you that. What are your plans? What are your forecasts? In today's world, this is a huge one. You need to really star this one. A poor online presence, bad reputation. It's the first place anybody's going to look. And it is so hard. It's kind of like having a first date with spinach in your teeth or something. It's something that it's very, very hard to get over. So make sure the online presence is clear. Clean up that reputation. Respond to bad comments. It is a huge impactor to value in today's world. I would say it's definitely, in probably the top 3 to 5, without a doubt. If historic performance was inconsistent, you see this in the public markets more, where they may smooth earnings a little bit. We can do that with private companies. As we come to the end of the year, maybe we defer some revenue to the following year, or recognize it earlier. Just try to kind of look at that. Inconsistent historic. There's not a whole lot you can do, but just be conscious of it. You're going to have to explain it and understand it. Contracts that are unassignable, contracts, agreements, leases, supplier agreements, customer agreements, make sure that there's an assignability clause in there. It's usually never a reason why a contract won't get signed, but say, upon the sale of the company, transfer of ownership, that this contract can be assigned under the same terms. We had a real bad problem, it's probably been about 10 years ago, where one of my good friends and clients, he was the alternative to a big waste management company in Houston from a recycling standpoint. So companies that dealt with him probably didn't want to deal with the other companies. But when we got into we didn't even get through LOI, they wanted to make sure that the customers were okay with assigning the contracts. They said, well, if I assign the contracts, and they know I'm selling to you, then I might, risk losing that customer. And they said, well, we're not going to go forward unless, they agree to it. Now, had there been an assignability clause in the contract, it would have simply transferred. It was a pretty substantial acquisition in the $10 to $12 million range. Here's another one: discretionary owner expenses that are run through the company. All this stuff to reduce taxes. And here's kind of a simple concept. If you are doing all this to reduce taxes, let's say for every $1,000, you might save 30% in taxes. It's $300 you're going to save. But if that earnings is questioned by the bank, by the investors in due diligence, then you're going to miss whatever that multiple of earnings was in your valuation. So let's say, and I'm just going to use $1,000, a write-off. You write off hunting trips or something, or trip to the beach, something like that, and you save $300 in taxes, right? Well, if the buyer or the evaluator doesn't give credit for that, you can lose $4,000 in valuation. So it's really important to start, just cleaning that up, suck it up, and kind of pay the taxes on that. Hope that makes sense. This is another thing, but people are going to look at, the competitive advantage. What's your competitive advantage that you have? What makes you different from the competition out there? Is it reputation, relationship, a system, a process? That increases value and it can hurt when it's not there. Outdated machinery, equipment, and technology can really hurt values, because again, someone has to look at that outdated equipment and they're going to take that out of your cash flows. So when we looked at printing companies, we would look at the year and estimated life, the shape of it, and say, we're going to have to replace this piece of equipment within a year or 2 years, and we'd take that out of cash flows. So it's really important to take a look at that. If revenues are declining and expenses are increasing, again, it's just kind of a bad sign. It means expected sales are probably going to go down if the trend continues, or revenues are going to increase. If business operations are very complex, it scares people away. It can scare people away. And kind of an added tip here, if you've got an exotic ownership structure, we worked with a client, and Gary came in, and we had to have another attorney come in to really figure this out. They had LPs that owned the GP, that owned a S corporation, that owned a C corporation, had their employees in one. It was so complex. And we were going through due diligence with KPMG, and they literally said, "What the hell is this?" Remember that, Gary? And we had to unwind everything, and it was just crazy. It just really added to it. So those are some of the biggest risks that really will impact value. And as a business owner, advisor, this is the key to really start working on that. And that's what moves you over to the right hand of the bell curve. That's what gets you above average and sets you apart from the competition when you're out there. So real quickly, I just want to walk through the key components of putting together a plan. All right, so if you're going to say, what are the key components to put together a plan to increase my value? And this is what we do with clients. Like Andrew said early on, we try to work early and say, is there a way that we can develop a recurring or at least a predictable revenue stream, so we know where our orders are coming from, how many come in. Certain franchises, by location, they know exactly how many cars are going to drive by, if they're on what side of the road, and how many people are going to stop in. And that gives comfort to franchise owners and increases value of franchise. So if you know what drives your customers and customer retention, so if it's SEO, for what you spend in SEO, you get X number of clients that come in, or advertisement, or sales calls, phone calls, emails, whatever that is, if you don't have a recurring revenue stream. But I really encourage everyone to try to think of ways that you can get a recurring revenue stream, a buyer's club, a discount, an annual discount to be a member, anything like that. I have an interest in a landscape company, and there's an annual contract that automatically renews. So, we lose very few customers every year. Maybe it's a change in ownership or something, but an annual contract like that automatically renews. Jason Knight spoke last week, but developing strong processes, systems, and controls. I can't emphasize this enough. Something like an EOS system, traction system. Like Jason said last week, some private equity groups are, they mandate that the companies that they invest in or they build are going to have an EOS system, a traction system. I encourage you to read the book Traction, to look at EOS, to go back to Jason's presentation last week. But this type of thing, when someone can walk in and they say, hey, here's our process manual for sales. We have a weekly meeting where we discuss challenges and problems. Here's our systems. Here's our financial controls. It's in a binder or it's online. It's incredibly impressive, and it gives confidence to the buyer. Again, audited or reviewed financial statements. I think in today's world, small company and Gary, some of the other CPS can maybe talk about what an audit or reviewed financials would cost to get done. But again, it just gives confidence that I'm checking the box, the financial statements in the house are in order. Identify potential strategic buyers early on. Start looking at your trade journal. Who's buying companies? What do they want? What are they looking for? What's their customer makeup? What kind of sales process do they have? What are they like? How can I lock myself into them? Who's the ideal buyer for us? Who's going to pay the premium? Who do I mean the most to? Who wants to get into the Texas market? When we sold our printing company, the investment banker said, look, this company is a national company. They have a footprint everywhere but the Southwest. So you're a great fit for the Southwest. So something like that. This is good in general terms. If you're going to sell or not, but have all your records, corporate records, contracts, agreements, everything organized in a Dropbox, a secure data room. Anyone that's ever gone through due diligence, it is just pure hell. It's challenging. It's really hard to go through. You're going to be asked every single question. And if you have that set up ahead of time and it's all organized, our philosophy is what's coming in due diligence, so have it set up and have it ready. It makes everything a lot easier. Again, clean up any online reputation. Have a very, very strong online profile. It's really important. It's just the very first place people are going to look. Very first place. It's the first impression. And you know what first impressions are about. I would say get clear, reasonable valuation expectations. Know ahead of time. What's the expected value in our industry? Some people are shocked to hear, we worked with a software as a service company, small company. They're valued on multiples of revenue, because if you're embedded in somebody's company as their software system or a part of it, very, very hard to displace, to kick out, to replace. Incredible valuations, just incredible, which are completely different than the average company that's out there. So understand and get a reasonable valuation expectation. It'll help set the stage for your retirement and for the exit and what you're going to walk away with. Have trusted advisors that you really, really trust. Attorney, good financial planner, M&A advisor, CPA. Just surround yourself by trusted advisors. The smartest people in the world, the most successful people in the world have advisors and have boards. There's people that I look up to. Greg Phillips is really a guy that I turn to, which is all kinds of any question I have. I just good, reasonable, common sense, smart, experienced. So just have people that you turn to that you trust. And again, I just end with really, removing yourself as the owner. The company's not all about you. I think last week, Dave Lacoste asked a question about, if the owner's setting the culture and he's everything, man, it kills value. It really, really does, unless you want to go with the sale, right? That's not usually most people's objectives. So I'll go through these concluding thoughts and then we'll get some questions. I'm sure we have some good questions that come up. So here's my concluding thoughts, my takeaways. Recurring, consistent, predictable revenue changed my life. It really did. It commands the highest value. Strategic buyers will pay more because of increased synergies and other benefits. This fear of losing money, like we found from Mr. Easley, despite the fact that he was getting these great odds, when it came to losing $100, it hurt him more than winning 200. So think about that in terms, again, on $1 million acquisitions, what potential buyers and investors are looking at. Keep that in the back of your mind. The key to increasing value on a relative basis, once you've done all you can to increase your profitability, is really to decrease these company-specific risks. Companies are all valued on their own merit, individual merit, not just because I'm in the printing industry, I'm in the restaurant industry, I'm the CPA. There's going to be an average, but companies are valued on their own opportunity and own risk. Above all, really, if you're looking to exit your company and sell, have empathy and really understand what the potential buyers' concerns and objectives are. If we're going through the COVID. So we had a very interesting call yesterday. We're working with a client through COVID. The buyers really wants to acquire the company. They want to get it through. They just want to make sure things return. And the seller looked him in the eye and said, "Man, I wouldn't be buying a company now." Yeah, he understood it. He got it, and we're working through it. And start the process early. Just start this process early. It can be very challenging, hard. A lot of these concepts that I said, it's kind of like saying you want to run a marathon. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to go out there every single week and, put in 20, 30 miles a week on the shoes. So some of these are simple concepts, but they're, they take a while to implement and get them up to speed. So I think, well, that's pretty good. About 40 minutes. That's about a couple full MBA classes condensed into 40 minutes there. Those are the key concepts. Those are the key concepts. They really did. I mean, they changed my life, and I've seen so many others that they've changed their life, and it's well worth it. So I'll turn it back over to Andrew for questions.
Yeah, Al, we've got Josh, and I've muted his mic if he wants to go ahead and chime in and ask it. Go ahead, Josh.
Hey, Al, this is Josh here. What is a good way to preserve institutional memory in an organization when key leaders do leave or transition either to a different role or outside the business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. It's really important. History and culture is important, but it's really important for that owner to step out and get that embedded, right? Get it. So if you're doing a lot of fun things in your company, and again, I'll go back to Dave Linda. He was probably one of the greatest examples of a company that was just so well put together. And a lot of it was just, he's a kind of a caring person. He's smart. And he embedded fun days. They went out, they threw axes. They was always one of the funnest companies in Houston to work at. And he embedded that in his culture. So it wasn't him. It wasn't him, being the leader and everyone following him, right? It was embedded in the culture. This fun, creativeness, he had a thing, there was no fear of failure. It was autopsy, you can't remember the word, but basically if someone made a mistake, you didn't go look for the blame, you looked for the reason. And said, okay, if we left screws sitting in someone's closet and someone knelt down and hurt their knee on it, why? What happened? Well, we didn't run the magnetic wheel, or it wasn't strong enough, or we couldn't get out of the carpet. So it's it's this autopsy without blame, where it's embedded in the culture. It's not based on the owner and the owner running everything and him or her micromanaging and going through it, right? So it's embedding that all in the culture. A history is good and is important, right? But it needs to be a part of the company. It needs to transfer from that owner into the company versus it being all about the owner and him or her making all the decisions. Does that make sense, Josh?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Hey, Al. Kevin Simmons here. How you doing?
Hey, Kevin. How are you?
Great. Long time. Question. I actually got a situation now. What techniques have you found? Well, what works well when there's a big gap in what you believe the valuation is and the buyer? What do you think works best? What have you found?
Yeah, there's this gap. There's an incredible gap that we have, right? It's kind of like a bid-ask price. We're really seeing a lot of it now in COVID, even getting wider, because things have changed so quickly, right? Where this, again, like the healthcare club that I gave the example of, they're down 70%. So, 3 months ago, their value was a lot higher. Andrew Shields and myself actually wrote a white paper on this and bridging the gap. So there's ways.
Okay.
We can send that out. Well, we're just kind of going through the final touches of it, but I can give you some techniques for it. Certainly a seller note, right? What we're doing now, a lot of ways is saying, hey, look, if things recover from COVID and we come back the same as we were before, they deserve full valuation, right? But they certainly don't deserve it now. So if we compensate for that risk of COVID now, we're going to decrease the price. We're going to decrease the price. What we can do to bridge that gap is say, okay, we'll take 60% of the money up front now, and we'll prorate the difference going forward based on, you know, the revenue that comes back in after COVID. So if we're down 20%, you know what? Then your business is down 20%. So our earnout can be good. Another really good thing is pointing out these risks, right? Like if there's embedded risk, what are your risks? What are your fears? Is it fear that a couple big customers may leave? Well, then that can be a holdback, right? Or an earnout. So when you get down to bridging this gap, really what you're talking about is how do we share in this risk? I got a fear that it's going to go down. It doesn't materialize. Are you overvalued? If it's pure overvaluation, you know, getting a third party in, you know, SBA loans are up to $5 million now, and they require an outside valuation. So you're going to get an outside valuation that's done,
Okay.
right?
Okay. I
Sometimes
just didn't know when to break out the baseball bat.
yeah, you know, that usually doesn't help, you know, and there's a lot, you know, a lot of it's a misunderstanding too. Whenever we try to go to market, we get a realistic expectation of valuation and say, look, you know, would you do the same on the other side? You know, imagine running your company right now with $5 million in debt or $6 million in debt, and this payment or that payment. So it's coaching on that, and then practical ways to bridge the gap can, you know, traditional ways in earn out. Hey, if it does what it says you do, we'll earn out. Not only that, I'll pay you more for the company, right? Kind of identifying those risks and saying, hey, we really have a risk that your key employees could leave. You know, they could really walk right out the door and take the business, right? They could walk out the door and take it. Hey, we're not comfortable on your financials. Let's get an audit. Let's get your financials reviewed. You know, you say these customers aren't going to leave. You know, let's talk to the customers, and let's have the confidence. You know, and if you get that confidence, you're willing to pay a little bit more, right? Then you've got that confidence, and you can bridge that gap. So sometimes you have to get creative, and sometimes expectations are just out of line, and the market's got to reset it. Competing against a strategic buyer. So we work with a lot of search funds, and they have trouble competing against a strategic buyer. A search fund is an acquirer that's basically being backed. They've raised a fund to go out and acquire a company, and typically a financial acquisition. They want a return on their investment, something they can grow. And when they compete against a strategic buyer, someone like me, when I was buying printing companies out, value was more to me. So the value can be more to a strategic buyer because they can cut out all these costs, right? And overhead. So sometimes you can't compete against a strategic buyer. Sometimes if you really like the company, over time, you know, you're looking at financing a lot of this at very low. It's okay. It's okay to pay a little bit more for quality. It's not okay to pay more for something that's a little risky, but for quality. So again, Dave Linda's company that I was using as an example, it was just a really, really quality company. And he commanded and got a very high price. But the buyer came in there, and he looked at a lot of companies, and he saw, hey, this is really a quality company, and I'll pay a little bit more for it. So hope that helps. Those are some tips. But
No,
sometimes you want to take out the baseball bat, believe me. But,
Hey, James, you want to shoot over your question?
I think I did. You want me to ask it out? You want me to ask it out loud?
Sure, go for it.
So, Al, in our business, it is near impossible to gain recurring revenue.
okay.
We've tried for probably a decade. That said, we replace recurring revenue with gaining customers that have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sites. So when we do well in 5, 10, 15 of them, then 500 become our target. recently, we've become the strategic preferred vendor for a Fortune 50. That means every project they do in the nation comes to us. Thoughts on your valuation when that's the case?
Oh, you're going to have a big step up in valuation, right? You've got a kind of predictable recurring revenue. So one, who's now a partner, John Maneri, was a lighting contractor, and he was very similar. He was kind of the go-to partner, the preferred partner for some Fortune 100 companies, right? So he installed lights in all their plants all over the world, most of the country, most of the U.S., but big projects. So that was an incredible value. And he sold the company to Sylvania, and they paid a big premium because they were able to get into those relationships that they had. So we were preferred vendor to Anheuser-Busch, to some of the big beverage distributors. So again, that really added to our value. So James, that adds value. That's that predictability. It's something different than just going out and not knowing where your next project's going to come from. So anything that can be kind of modeled, so you can look and say, okay, hey, we're the preferred vendor for this company. We're doing 15 sites now, and we can do 100. So at the end of the day, when I sold the company, there were like 1,100 Anheuser-Busch wholesalers. We were doing business with about 400 or 500 of them. I didn't have the same penetration to like Miller, Coors, and some of the others, but we said, hey, this penetration that's available out there, and we've opened the door for it. So something like that is going to significantly increase your value. It really is, right? It's going to push you.
All right,
off.
so
Right.
I have an add-on question.
Yeah.
So we're extremely good at what we do. And a division within this company has asked us, do we do other things? The answer is no, but it wouldn't necessarily be that difficult for us to branch that other direction. That would probably take us out of our comfort zone and our bailiwick.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
It's each such situation depends, right? I mean, certainly if you can grow your company and you have a core solid value proposition. One of the biggest challenges to the entrepreneur is saying no and not moving out beyond it. Matt asked Mattress Mac why he's never really expanded beyond Houston and beyond. And he's built up this incredible business and market share in Houston, right? But he hasn't expanded or grown. So, that's a very, very strategic, that's something that you've got to sit down. That's a big strategic decision that you have to make, and you have to weigh the pros and cons of it, right? But in some cases, you can be too narrow of a niche and you need to expand. In others, you can really just own this big niche. Like, I heard you say you had 15 and maybe you've got 500. So focusing those efforts on building up those, right? Or even spinning off, maybe setting up a separate kind of division or letting somebody run with that, right? So what you don't ever want to do is destroy the mothership to go after something new, right? And when the entrepreneurial mind that's creative and likes this new, the new thrill of the chase and the hunt, it's something we have to guard against. But one way to do that is to keep the mothership and then go after something separate, right? So if it works out, you can grow it, and if not, it doesn't impact the mothership, and then keep focusing on growing that. So
James, check
I'm
out
good, thank you.
the goal. I don't know if it's kind of on the manufacturing side of things. I don't know if that's the industry that you're in, but I think it's relatable to any industry. There's a lot of talk about pivoting from one product to another product and trying to adapt to the market. It's always good to adapt, but like Al said, stick to what you're good at too. And you have to take into account, how do you affect throughput and creating bottlenecks and running into problems. So I think it would answer a lot of those questions. We had to read it for class, and not something that I normally would have read, but I actually found it very interesting.
Hey, that's Jim Wheaton. But that's the question. Oh, I just noticed that, Jim. I can't see everyone out there. Yeah, you got to kind of weigh that. But I mean, you know the history, right? Of building up. So if you got that opportunity, but if that opportunity shut down, you've got to look somewhere else. Then yeah, you've got to look somewhere else. But you can continue to grow and expand within that niche or that vertical. You've got a lot of runway left in it, and keep exploring that.
All right, thank you.
Well, we're at the hour. Al, we had another question come through. It was anonymous, and it's at our firm, Exit Advisors specifically, what are some major sources of recurring revenue streams that we have? That's as much as we've talked about it. That's not really something that we specialize in, but maybe you can.
Yeah, well, that's exactly true. I mean, what we really try to do is most sales side representatives try to capture it at the end, right? So it's kind of a one-time deal. So we work, we try to work years ahead of time, right? So it's a quarterly review. We almost become a trusted advisor, a part of the team where we can review, see where we're at in valuation, help make decisions, help make sure that those decisions are how they impact value, how they impact the long-term exit plan. And everything, but that is one of the challenges, to be quite honest. And if we were to build this company to exit, and me or Gary were to leave, then we would have to make sure that we've got a good referral source coming in, leads coming in, stuff coming in off the internet. Gary is really big on getting out there on the internet and SEO, so you can go out and say, hey, every year X number of clients that come in off the internet.
Oh,
just off our personal reputation. So we'd have to show our funnel. We'd have to show where our customers come from. And at the end of the day, if we can't really build out something that's strong and goes beyond us, or the infrastructure, the referral source, the leads that come in, then we're not going to have something. We may be working until we're 80. We don't want to, so we're working on figuring that out.
Well, we're a little past the hour, so I guess we'll wrap things up. We've had the upcoming town halls on the screen in front of you, but you can see we've got a pretty good lineup coming up again. Big one next week with Jay Steinfeld, founder and CEO of Blinds.com. And then after that, we've got Gary's, the continuation and final part of his 3-part series of building a service-based business. And then many more to follow for many weeks to follow. So everyone keep an eye out on your calendar for your invites, LinkedIn, emails, and then, feel free to reach out if you have other questions. And thank you, Al.
Well, thank you, everybody. Like I said, I enjoy it. I'm passionate about it. It's kind of been part of my life since I was in my 20s. So enjoy talking about it. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Jay Steinfeld, just a plug for Jay. Jay's incredible. His story about how he started Blinds.com, built it and sold it to Home Depot was an incredible story. So open to anybody. So spread the word for Jay. He's just an incredible speaker. Lots of insights. Great story. I know everyone will enjoy it.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone.